Burijan Prabhu, and together they pioneered a Namahata center in Hong Kong. Srila Prabhupada encouraged her to use artistic talents in attracting people to the cultural side of devotional service. Some years later, this manifested during her stay in the Gita Nagari farm, that's in US, as a series of puppet shows, later presented worldwide viewing by ITV. In 1983, she moved with her family to Sri Vrindavan Dham, and there spent the next 13 years teaching in Bhakti Vedanta Gurukul. And till to date, 1996, till to date, Mataji and His Grace Burijan Prabhu, they are now based in Perth, and Mataji is rendering a lot of services to Lord Sri Krishna. So thank you so much, Mataji, for your wonderful service. And Mataji, a humble request, I did mention to you that you will be speaking on Srimati Radharani's pastime, but at the same time, you can also tell us your interaction with Srila Prabhupada and some of the pastimes of Srila Prabhupada. We really appreciate. Thank you, Mataji. It's all yours now. Hare Krishna.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So thank you for your introduction and for reading that little section of the Prabhupada Lilamrita, describing how Srila Prabhupada challenged Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur with the conflict between current affairs and the importance of spiritual life. And interestingly enough, we heard how Srila Prabhupada referred to his spiritual life or the spiritual life of the world, as the world is thinking, as being a luxury, because there was a crucial event that had to take place first. First, we had to solve the problem of being a non-independent India, and then we would solve the problem of spiritual life. Now, one thing is that I understood that these lectures or presentations are actually leading up to Radhastami. They're live, so they're not actually Radhastami per se. And so this morning I was thinking that perhaps even more important than hearing some sweet pastimes, which are like stories, we should hear something a little more practical to prepare ourselves for the importance of what is Radhastami. So I would like to start with a little story or something that came into my mind this morning. It was an event in my life. So as you heard, prior to my coming in touch with Srila Prabhupada and the Krishna consciousness movement, I was training and interested in becoming an actress. And one thing I was very, very fond of was dancing. I thought to be a really good actress, you also need to know how to dance. And so I should learn dancing. Now, it wasn't Bharatanatyam dancing, but I was going regularly to a dance school. And every night I would get on my little motorbike and I would head off to the dance class, and I would do all the exercises and all the lesson entailed, and I would return feeling very happy. And the next night I would go and do the same thing. And what I was reflecting on was the fact that I did so many classes, I worked so hard, but I never learned to dance. I never learned to dance. You see, I was asking myself, why was it that I never learned to dance? And the conclusion I came to was that I didn't understand what the goal was or the purpose of dancing. Now I'm going to have to do something very unusual here. I'm going to have to plug in my phone because I got a little message saying that it was using up the battery. And then I'm going to continue on this point. So please excuse me for a moment. So before you lost me completely, I've plugged it in. Okay, so I asked myself, why was it that I had so many classes and I never ever learned to dance? And it was difficult to answer this question, but I think it was because I assumed. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, Mataji. I think it's Nirmala. Can you please mute yourself?
Shall I continue?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, thank you. So I think the reason I never learned to dance was because I thought it would happen automatically. I thought that if I just kept going through these routines and routines and routines, strengthening my legs, strengthening my body, practicing, that automatically somehow at some stage I would become a dancer. And then I realized only recently, after 50 years, that it was never going to be automatic. It had to involve, from my side, a genuinely strong desire to learn how to dance, to go beyond the practice. Practice means sadhana, the routines, to come to a point where the only thing I wanted was to be a dancer. And I didn't have that. That wasn't my intention. Interestingly enough, by Krishna's arrangement, it was only perhaps 2 years before I found myself in a temple, out on the street, dancing for 5 or 6 hours every day. Now, that dancing and the dancing I was trying to do before were very different. The dancing of a Sankirtan party is a dance that is going to take you forward in your spiritual life. And the dancing of a dancing girl is going to, more than definitely, it's going to entangle you in a series of more materialistic desires and intentions and plans and thoughts and so on. And the last thing that will come up is this question about the spiritual life. So hearing Srila Prabhupada speaking and his arguments, which I know from reading the Lilamrita, he was extremely happy when he had his arguments nullified by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaja's statements. And I think I was also somehow or other very grateful that I managed to eliminate from my portfolio the desire to become famous as something, a dancer, an actress, or something of this world. We all know we have to live in this world, and therefore we have activities we have to perform. But at the same time, and I think this is the sober point, unless we develop a desire that I want to see Krishna, I want my relationship with Krishna to become more prominent than anything else. Unless we have an aspiration, even a far imaginary, distant such thought, then we may go on practicing Krishna consciousness, and we may become good people, we may become regulated, we may even become successful materially. We may develop all kinds of good qualities which the world would admire. But that's not the purpose of Krishna consciousness. The purpose of Krishna consciousness is to actually leave this material world behind. There's a beautiful quote, which I don't have with me right now, where Srila Prabhupada explains that the purpose of Krishna consciousness is to learn how to dance with Krishna. Now, we don't want to become sahajiyas. A sahajiya is somebody who thinks that I can enjoy Krishna's company in this body. This body is what I take with me when I go to the spiritual world. So when we're thinking that like this, I must be really pleasing Krishna, that's not correct. Yes, we can please Krishna in this body by our humility, but to actually associate with Krishna, we have to develop a spiritual form. And that spiritual form does develop slowly, gradually, by our sadhana, but it intensifies, purifies, and moves far more quickly when we hear about Krishna and we think, I would like to be with him. I'm just going to get something I left behind. Okay. So, Srila Prabhupada says, the eternal reality is Krishna consciousness. The eternal reality is Krishna consciousness. And this world where we're residing now, sometimes he says it's a shadow. Sometimes he says it's a reflection, just as in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna himself says that this world is situated as a reflection of a reality on the surface of water. And I've seen pictures of different rivers in New Zealand and forests on the side of those rivers or lakes. And if the water is very still, the trees themselves, the mountains behind, and the trees and mountains reflected in the water are so mirror reflected that you could take the photo and twist it one way up and turn it the other way up, and you'd be searching very hard to find some kind of a clue as to which was the real tree, which was the reality, and which was the reflection in the water. However, when there's turbulence in the water, when there's a strong wind and the waves start coming up, then there's no way you could mistake the reflection, which is very fragmented, with the beauty of the transcendental reality. So the world at the present time, as we know, is going through one of those turbulent times. And during turbulent times, everybody's minds are full of the things that are happening around them. And then there are threats where somebody says, this is dangerous, and somebody else says, no, this is dangerous. And in the case of the independence that India was striving for, they also had to encounter a full world war before they could actually grasp onto the freedom that they were considering to be of top priority. But how free are the people of this world? In 1970, Srila Prabhupada, just before I became a devotee, he finished the publication and printing of the Krishna book. I think he finished the publication and printing of both books, but definitely he finished the first volume. And in the first volume, you'll see there is an introduction by George Harrison, and then there's a little preface, and then there's a little section that Srila Prabhupada writes. And if you look it up, you'll see that he says, so somebody looking at the cover of this book might ask two questions. One question is, who is Krishna? And the other question is, who is the girl standing by his side? Now, the interesting thing for me, I've read that introduction quite some time ago, and I looked at it again recently, and Srila Prabhupada makes many wonderful points. He explains his evidences of why Krishna is the Supreme Personality, Bhagavan, with all the six opulences in full. He introduces all the authorities who also accept Krishna as a Supreme Personality of Godhead. He introduces Lord Chaitanya. He even introduces the different relationships we can have with Krishna. But he never once answered the question of who is the girl. It doesn't come up again, only comes up in the question form. And then he didn't speak of it again. So why is that? I'm sure you all know. The main reason, of course, is that how do his audience have any qualification whatsoever to understand anything about the young, beautiful young girl standing beside Krishna if they don't understand who is Krishna first? And so Srila Prabhupada decided to only speak answering the first question. But in his teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Srila Prabhupada, also this was one of his very, very first books, he decided to offer this book to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who sent the very first book ever in English to the Western world on Sri Chaitanya and his life and his teachings. And Srila Prabhupada points out a wonderful thing, that that book arrived in America in 1896. And that was the year that Srila Prabhupada was born. So, you know, in our lives, we often come across things that are coincidences, like we're sitting in school and we find ourselves sitting next to somebody who has the same name as us. Or we meet somebody and we think they're very nice, and then we find out they're born on the same year and birth as us. Something, coincidences. But this was not just a coincidence. It was much more than that. This was a higher arrangement for the benefit of the whole of humanity. Now, when I say that, I wish from the heart that I could understand the magnitude of my own words. But that's a lot to ask. So until I can grasp how profound it is that Srila Prabhupada has come and delivered these wonderful teachings, introduced Lord Chaitanya to the Western world, and given us his explanations of all these subject matters, coming in the line of Sri Chaitanya through Srila Rupa Goswami, who was empowered by Lord Chaitanya to write the theology of Krishna consciousness. So the Rupa Goswami met Lord Chaitanya, and together they spoke for 10 days. And everything that is in the books of Srila Rupa Goswami came from the heart of Sri Chaitanya. So this is our Gaudiya Vaishnava line. It comes through these exalted personalities, through from Sri Chaitanya, Nityananda, the 6 Goswamis, through to the line that came after the 6 Goswamis, and eventually it comes to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Srila Narottam Das Thakur, Jagannath Das Babaji, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, names we know, names that are rather more like contemporary. And then, of course, it comes to Srila Prabhupada himself. And then, like a trunk, that's growing like this, and then it starts to branch out in very many directions. Srila Prabhupada's movement has spread throughout the whole world, some parts more, some parts less, but it's spread everywhere, so that that tree of Krishna consciousness, the tree that Lord Chaitanya is the trunk of, and he's also the gardener of, that tree may flourish in the world as it is today and in the future. So when I came to Auckland, it was in 1972. Possibly I was trying to remember, there may be some, there would be some recordings. There was a meeting in the town hall, and there was also a meeting in an art gallery. I remember particularly the art gallery because 72, I'd only been a devotee for a couple of years. And like many people who are newly coming into Krishna consciousness, I couldn't really enter very deeply into the philosophy or even into the gravity with which Srila Prabhupada would speak. I was very much drawn to him as a person, as somebody who I thought was heroic and spiritually, divinely wonderful. But when he would start to speak, I would find myself nodding off. And this was a continued problem that I had, especially being tired from doing so many things and being so excited. So we were in this art gallery, and Prabhupada was sitting on a comfortable cane chair. The ground was a sort of seagrass square, which was very popular in those days. And myself and maybe 2 or 3 other devotees, 3 or 4, we were sitting on either side of him on the ground. And I was sitting quite close to him and listening and trying to pay attention, but it was so difficult for me. And so slowly, I found myself slumping forward, and I wasn't able to concentrate or hear anything anymore. Until I heard Prabhupada say, so her name is, whose name? Her name is Jagattarini. He used to speak like that and raise his head like a lion. And she is saving the world by dancing. I told you I never learned to dance. So when I heard my name, I was so embarrassed because there I was. They all turned their attention to me and I'm sound asleep. And these were the things that those early days were made of. So I tried to very slowly, I was very calculated, tried to slowly raise up as if I was sitting up straight, and then open my eyes. And I looked up at him feeling very ashamed. But he looked back at me. He was as if he didn't see me. He was busy presenting something to them, and I was there. And I saw that Srila Prabhupada had a way. He was like a commander of some sort. And he used we were his troops, and he used us as he chose. And that was our good fortune, and sometimes quite challenging, when he would use you in a way that didn't quite add up. So there he was speaking to this audience, who were now, by this time I had my eyes open and I was looking back at them. They were looking at me in awe. And he said, she was traveling the world. I wasn't. Earning millions. I wasn't. Dancing. She was a famous dancer. And now, he added, she is delivering the world by dancing. So it was part of being with Srila Prabhupada that you had to let him alter the facts, the reality so called, in favor of drawing others towards an attraction for Krishna. This was his intention. So back to who is the girl. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, now I don't know if I can find it right now. That always happens, doesn't it? Whenever you want to quote something, it's the one thing you can't find. But there was a part I was just reading before we came online, which was describing where the question was asked by Lord Chaitanya, and Prabhupada asked the question, so who is the, I found it. It's actually from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So this is the interesting part. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the introduction, Srila Prabhupada asks this question again. This is now in 1975. The Krishna book was in 1970. Only 5 years later, Srila Prabhupada has now amassed a worldwide movement by some brilliance on his transcendental behalf, and also by the arrangement of Krishna. So here he says, When one is attracted by the transcendental beauty of Radha and Krishna, he no longer is attracted by material feminine beauty. This is the special significance of Radha Krishna worship. When we are attracted by Madan Mohan and the beauty of Krishna and his consorts, then the shackles like iron chains on our heart. Shackles are like when the convicts in Australia, when they would take them and put them in prison, they would put iron chains around their feet. So when they were outside doing some menial work, they couldn't just jump up and run away. So similarly for ourselves, we're so conditioned to try to enjoy this world in some way or another, in a good way, in a passionate way, or in a horrible way. Some people like to do that. But you'll notice, if you observe carefully, or even if you don't observe very carefully, you'll notice that everyone is absorbed in this world and take it very seriously. Even ourselves, we take it very seriously. And that is a shackle. So, Prabhupada says, when we are attracted by Madan Mohan and the beauty of Krishna and his consorts, the shackles of conditioned life, namely the beauty of a material woman, and he would add, a material man, cannot attract us. Why is that? Now, listen to this. This brings up the question of who is Srimati Radharani and what Radha Krishna is. Now, 5 years later than the Krishna book, Srila Prabhupada is asking this question. And this time he's asking it in context of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. But interestingly enough, this introduction to the Chaitanya Charitamrita was a series of lectures that were given earlier than the Krishna book in New York. So much later and earlier, Srila Prabhupada is going to ask this question again. Who is Srimati Radharani? Who is the boy and who is the girl? And here's his answer. Actually, Radha and Krishna is the exchange of love, but not ordinary love. And then again, he goes on to explain Krishna, because we must understand Krishna to understand Radha. Krishna has immense potencies, of which three are principal: the internal, external, and marginal. In the internal potency, there are 3 divisions: Samvit, Ladini, and Sandini. So here he's explaining that Krishna has innumerable different qualities, innumerable different potencies. That means energies, forces, powers, skills. Krishna has these in the same way as the sun has pencil-like rays coming out unlimitedly. So Krishna has unlimited qualities, unlimited potencies. And of all of those qualities and potencies, the Ladini potency, or the pleasure-giving potency, is Krishna's best potency. And why is it considered the best? because it's the most attractive. Just like, how can we say? We can have so many things, but if they don't bring us pleasure, then they're okay. I might have so much money, I might have a big house and a fancy car. But if they don't bring me any pleasure, then what's the use? Because the purpose for which we do everything is a search for pleasure. Now he continues to explain about this pleasure potency by explaining how we too, we have a pleasure potency, or we have a power to derive pleasure. But the problem is we're taking our power or ability to derive pleasure and we're fixing it on material objects, on things of this world. I know when I was starting out in my acting career, I was thinking, if I could go to Sydney, I live in Melbourne now, if I could go to Sydney, my career would take off. And do you know that soon after that, naturally enough, I found I was in Sydney. And then I thought, now what do I need to be really an actress? And I thought, I need an agent. And soon after that, I found an agent. And then I thought, this agent isn't getting me very much work. I think I need the best agent. And soon after that, I found myself with the best agent. And then I thought, this is good, I've got all these things in place, but I think I would really, really, really make it if I should go overseas and find out what it's like in England. And before long, this potency to seek pleasure, this aspiration to have pleasure from this world, it's inherent within us. It turned me towards, how do I get my fare to go to England? And I had it. I found my fare. And I was off on my way. But do you know, even before I met devotees who helped me to become intelligent, I had already observed that each step of my journey, as I accomplished it, it didn't bring me the satisfaction I anticipated. In fact, all it did was tell me that now you have that. So it's there already. What don't you have? This, that, and so on. And that's why I say, if we turn our own power to have pleasure, if we turn it in the direction of Krishna consciousness, that's called eternal reality. That's not just the journey of passion that most of us are on. That means that we're going towards not the flat, peaceful waters of the lake, not the turbulent waters that are very terrifying, but now we're zooming across the lake and we're moving towards Krishna. And this is the purpose of our life. So back to my original question. What would it have taken for me, although Srila Prabhupada humorously gave me credit for being a famous dancer earning millions of dollars, what would it have taken for me with all those practicing day after day, practice, exercise, sadhana. I was a sadhana dancer, like we can be a sadhana bhakta. It means I'm practicing. But what would it have taken for me to become alive? For me to really, really, really want to be a dancer? This morning I asked myself about this. And I thought it was important because now is the moment. This is pre-Radhastami. When Radhastami comes, you'll all be very busy, running around. And it will be very exciting, blissful. Your pleasure potency will reach some fulfillment and satisfaction. But this inner question, which is perhaps a question that people ask when they're older and wiser. But this question remains, what would it take for me to want to dance with Radha and Krishna? We don't want to dance with Krishna. Krishna is dancing with Radha. We don't want to try to usurp her transcendentally glorious, incomparably beautiful, divine position in Krishna's realm. We want to serve her, and we want to serve him through serving her. What would it take? So I came up with 3 things. The first one, it would take meeting, making contact with somebody who is advanced on that path. That may not be physical contact. That may be contact through somebody else. It may be contact through our own heart's prayers. But we have to come in contact with someone who has touched that realm of reality deeply. Sadhu Sangha. Serious Sadhu Sangha is the first one. The second one, it would take serious training in Shastra or Shastra Chakshus. So for those who don't know, Chakshus means, I think, I'm not a Sanskrit scholar, the eyes. So the process that Srila Prabhupada recommended was to try and learn through our eyes to see Krishna everywhere. When we come to the deities and we see Radha Giridhari, we perhaps even then don't see Krishna. We see them like dolls, beautifully decorated dolls. But if we see them and we can't see them, imagine what we can't see when we look around at the world. We see everything separate from Krishna. We don't see Krishna in everything. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna that one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, and they are never lost to me. So this learning how to see Krishna in nature, learning how to see Krishna in tragedy, learning how to see Krishna in dangerous situations, learning how to see Krishna when we're afraid, when we're happy, when we're busy, when we're passionate. Learning how to see Krishna is the second thing that we would have to develop to become a famous dancer. And the third one, and this is the one that links us so tightly with Srimati Radharani, we would need some extraordinary kripa, some extraordinary mercy. And you know, you can't ask for mercy and expect it to come like that. If you ask and expect it to come, that's just business. If I say, listen, I've come to the temple, I have a whole lot of problems at home, please, if you could help me solve them all, then I would be very happy. That's not bhakti to begin with. It's a part of our social training to turn to Krishna, But bhakti develops when we seek to serve. So that kripa, that mercy that comes back to us, it comes when we do something in the way of service without any expectation. And that mentality is incredibly hard to develop, particularly in this modern day and age, which is so dominated by passion and entrepreneurship and competition and becoming rich and trying to enjoy life. And after we have all of that, then we will surrender to Krishna. It doesn't work like that. It's those moments when you're put off guard, when you feel most vulnerable, and you offer a moment of unmotivated, unselfish exchange with Krishna that he likes more than anything else in the world, more than your cooking, more than the beautiful deity dresses, more than the arti, more than the abhishek. He likes that. So this kripa, this mercy, this very much comes through Srimati Radharani. And so Radhastami, which you're heading towards, is the day in which we should do whatever unselfish, unmotivated service we can, and simultaneously we should be praying that somehow or another, ultimately, I want to learn to dance. I want to learn to dance in that eternal realm. And if I don't want to, because most of the time I know I don't want to, if I have just one moment where that thought occurs to me, I want to be with Krishna. Not I want Krishna to come and help me. I want to go where he is and serve him in the beautiful land where he resides. I want to go there. If I have just one moment of that in a day, I consider that a wonderful day. We all have our commitments, our family, our responsibilities. We all have our schedules, our deadlines, and things that are important. We all have these things. But if you have one moment where you feel like that from the heart, it would be so amazing to be with Krishna. Then that's a wonderful day. And if by the end of your life, you understand very strongly and clearly that the purpose of Krishna consciousness is to uncover, restore, renovate, and fix the broken relationship I have with Krishna at the present time. I want that to be the purpose of my life. If you understand that by the end of this life, then your life is actually successful. Now, I've talked and talked. I didn't intend to speak as long as this, but somehow or another, I've kept going. You can please tell me if there is anything else that you want me to do.
Thank you, Mataji. Some of Srila Prabhupada's pastimes that you had interaction with Srila Prabhupada, you were here in Auckland as well, while installing Sri Jagattarini.
Sri Radha Giridhari came from India first to Sydney. And in Sydney, they were painted. And then they were shipped from Sydney over to Auckland. The first temple in Auckland was, I believe, in a street called Albert Road. And it was a small weatherboard house with at the front of the house, there was a small garden before the street. And on the left-hand side was the main master bedroom. On the right-hand side was the lounge room. It was a small house, and Srila Prabhupada stayed in that front master bedroom. The devotees had only been in Auckland about 2 weeks before he arrived, and it was very, very new times. There were no Indians in the community at that time. I don't think any of us could have imagined having Indians in our community. It just didn't seem like what was happening. And so Srila Prabhupada came. There was some hold up with the ticket, and so he arrived by himself, which never usually happened. First he would have his servant come out and carrying his little white bag that he carried everywhere, and then he would follow. But when the doors opened at the Auckland airport, they opened like this, and there was just Srila Prabhupada standing there. He had a beautiful chrysanthemum, I don't think it was gardenias, but it was white, a beautiful white garland that came right down to his knees. Now, I don't know how he got that garland into New Zealand. I can only imagine that the immigration, the customs and everything was different then than it is now. But he came out with this beautiful garland on. There was about 15 young devotees there, all new. The only actually initiated devotees was one young man from Hawaii called Krishna, and his wife, whose name was Krishna Tulsi, myself, and Bhajanavi, a brahmachari from Australia, and I think that was it. And Prabhupada came out, and there was a Hari Rama and another few uninitiated devotees at the time were having a kirtan, and he was very relaxed, very jovial, very comfortable when he arrived, and unusually so. There was one couple, I think they were Swiss, and they had a little blue car. And because there was no facilities, there was only this house, and they were trying to build a Vyasasan while he was coming. And because Tusta Krishna couldn't come to the airport because he was busy with all of the arrangements in the house, so he asked me to go. And so I came in that car, and when Srila Prabhupada came out of the airport, he looked around, and the car was there, and they pointed to the car, and he hopped in the front seat. And everyone was chanting, I was chanting, we were all very happy. And then he tapped on the window, and I looked, and he looked at me, and he pointed like this, to sit in the back, sit in the back. So I got in the back of the car, which was really an honor, because Srila Prabhupada usually had luggage and servants and men mostly serving him and around him. This was in 1972, so he didn't have so many big sannyasis at that time. So then we drove back to the temple, and on the way, he was looking around this way and that way. He liked New Zealand, and he asked a question that I'd heard him ask in Hong Kong and in other places. He said, do they eat dog here? He had a series of questions he would ask, and then he'd get the pulse of the place. And so they said to him, no, Srila Prabhupada, they don't eat dog here. Now, I don't know if there's a history of dog eating, but nobody who was present was a Kiwi, so nobody really knew. So he said, oh, that is very good. And then the driver, he said, and there's no snakes. And Prabhupada was very impressed. He liked to have some gentle talk as he was coming back to the temple. And when he got to the temple, he went into his room, and he put down his belongings and so forth. And then he came out and sat on this big vyasasana with big steps. It was velvet covered with a dark blue and a burgundy red. And it looked very solemn. It almost looked like it could have been a children's cubby house. It was huge, big steps going up. And it probably took up about an eighth of the room. It would be suitable to put in a nice big temple, but it wasn't suitable for a small lounge room. And so he sat there and he asked questions. He asked everybody how they were, what they were doing. He was very relaxed. And then he started to find out what was happening with the deities. I can't remember if the deities had already arrived or if they were on the way, but he asked about the deities. He worked out a time for the deities to be installed. And then one of his programs was at the town hall, and another one was at some kind of a center. And it was at that center that I saw the Indian, pardon me, the Indian community for the first time. And he started immediately telling them that they should help. And it seemed incongruous because here we were, some young Westerners, and we didn't know them, they didn't know us, but he was immediately mobilizing things. We came back to from that particular meeting, and he asked to arrange when the deities would be installed. They got together for a Saturday program. And I remember that Tusta Krishna, he was very sincere, and Srila Prabhupada very much liked him. So Tusta Krishna went to see Srila Prabhupada and asked him when was the auspicious time for the deity installation. And Prabhupada looked at he asked for the almanac, the calendar, and he looked at it carefully and he said the auspicious time was something like 10:30 in the morning. And Tusta Krishna said, Prabhupada, we don't want to install them then. And Srila Prabhupada looked a little puzzled, and he said, the auspicious time, and he gave it again, the time. And Tusta Krishna said, we don't want to do it then. And then Prabhupada looked at him and he said, the auspicious time is when everyone can come. This is the more important. And because of his humility, even though he was correcting Srila Prabhupada's information, Srila Prabhupada was very much appreciative and agreed with him. So there was a big Sunday program and the deities were installed. They had only one set of clothes, so they couldn't be changed. Initially, there were no other sets. And the altar was very makeshift. We had built it out of some pieces of wood and stuck some cloth on it. And it was very, very, what can I say? It was very, very homely. It wasn't like a formal, it was white painted with some dark green silk, kind of like a puffy border all around it, going down the sides. It didn't look finished. It didn't look really that beautiful. And Srila Prabhupada spoke and he tried to give whatever directions he was capable of giving before leaving the deities in our care. He made sure that I don't know if he gave any other Brahmin initiation, but he gave enough. I think there were 3 Brahmins in the community. And then he went on from there. I think he went to possibly even Fiji, and then definitely on towards America. So, yeah, that was the auspicious and profoundly informal way that Sri Radha Giridhari came to become the presiding deities of Auckland. So you're very fortunate because you can see them and you can try and remember Srila Prabhupada when you see them, and pray to them that you too can become more and more focused on the spirituality that is a part of your lives. We're all at different parts of our journeys, so there's always a challenge and always a reward. So I wish you all the very best there with your beautiful temple and your community. And always remember that we are all part of Krishna. When you're dealing with each other and you're not sure whether things are satisfactory or not, always go back to this point. I'm dealing with a part of Krishna. This person belongs to Krishna. And so Krishna will be pleased, Radha will be pleased if I serve this person even with care and attention. And if I'm not sure about what I should be doing, then learn to pray to them. They'll answer your prayers. They don't always answer your prayers immediately, and they don't always answer your prayers the way you'd like, but they will definitely reciprocate with you if you come forward and pray to them. So,
Thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you so much. And also thanking you for taking your valuable time out and being with us. For Auckland devotees, is there any question that you would like to ask Her Grace Jagattarini Mataji? You are most welcome. Any questions?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. This is Nandabraj. Mataji, have you been to Fiji? Yeah, and what was your impression? Because we are thinking.
I went to Fiji in 1976 with Srila Prabhupada. We were living in from 1974 to 1976. For those 2.5 years, we were living in Melbourne, Australia. And my husband is from America. So he was feeling restless and wanted to return to America. So Srila Prabhupada was encouraging us to take something up, some service somewhere, but we were young and somewhat restless. So in 1976, he decided, that's it, I'm going back to America. And so myself and my young daughter, who was 18 months old, and we were off back to America. As fate would have it, the tickets we were about to buy at a special price were cancelled. And my husband got a bright idea that maybe we should time our travel with Srila Prabhupada's travel. And so he arranged that. And we traveled from Melbourne to Auckland, Auckland to Fiji, and then Fiji to Hawaii with Srila Prabhupada. It should have been wonderful, you would expect, but it was a difficult time, and sometimes things that should be wonderful aren't as wonderful as they seem later because of some circumstance or another. So he was watching us. He was trying to get us repositioned in a place that would be good for us. And when we got to Fiji, we were staying with the name of that family.
What's the Puja?
Yes.
Puja.
We were staying with, I think we were staying with Jagannath. Myself and my husband and daughter, and Prabhupada was staying with Vasudev. And Prabhupada was, he'd said many times, when he gets to a place, Prabhupada would say, I'll stay here for 2 weeks. I will stay here and write here. This is a very good place. But oftentimes then he just was encouraging, but then he would keep moving. So he very quickly did the groundbreaking ceremony for the Krishna Kaliya temple. And I remember, I was a young mother with a baby, so mildly to moderately to sometimes excessively distracted. So I can't remember very much. There were some significant event exchanges that we had with him, but in general, I can't remember so much about Fiji as a place. I do recall that we went out with Upendra, who was a devotee who was staying in Fiji at the time. We went on a Harinam, and we went to a place, there were lots and lots of Fijians with their sort of frizzy hair. I think they were school children. And of course, there was a kind of a divide, because here we are, we're Westerner with an Indian dress in a Fijian environment. So it was a little bit like surrealistic almost, to tell you the truth. It wasn't like blissful. It was our offering of service. And sometimes service is not blissful. But Fiji, I saw, was a really interesting place. And the Indian community had not yet formed. So there wasn't an Indian community, there wasn't a temple. It was just the planting of the seed at the time we were there. And then from there we went on to Hawaii.
Oh, so wonderful, Prabhuji, for giving a brief background of Fiji, how the Krishna Kaliya Foundation is like. By the way, Jagannath Prabhu is in Auckland now.
Oh.
Maybe he's listening to your class, I'm sure. Thank you.
That would be nice. Thank you.
Such a nice memory. Very good. There's somebody, Gaurachan Prabhu, want to ask a question. Prabhu, go ahead. You can unmute your phone and speak.
Hare Krishna Mataji. My son Parth, he wants to ask a question to you.
Okay. I'll see if I can answer.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my obeisances.
Hare Krishna Parth.
Did Prabhupada like kids and play with them?
Again?
Did Prabhupada like kids and play with them?
Like kids and play with them? He very much liked kids and played with them. However, he was very busy. He had important work, you know, like how can I think? The President of the United States, a bad example, but I can't think. Somebody who's very important. They have very important things they have to do. And when they can relax a little bit, then they play with the kids. So sometimes Prabhupada was too serious to play with the children because he was giving classes and he was trying to organize. He was like a general in the army. And when he was on duty, he was like a lion. But when he was relaxed, he loved to play with children. You know, he used to play with little Saraswati. And you know what it used to be? He said one time, I heard, I didn't see this, but he said that in Bengal, old men, like a grandfather, they love to make the little children cry. That doesn't sound so nice, but I think it was kind of sweet. And so he would tell Saraswati things like, he would say, for example, we're going to put you in a box and we're going to post you back to America. And when the box goes to the post office, the postman will stamp it, boom, and it will crack your head. I heard that story. And she'd cry, and then Prabhupada would laugh. He was a little bit playful like that. And then he would give her a sweet, and he was very affectionate. So it was play crying. But yes, when he had time, he really loved the children. And he used to give sweets, cookies, wherever he went, to all the children who came to listen with their parents.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Bhat.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Anybody else got question or comments? Please come through. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna,
Hare
Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
I just wanted to ask a question about what you were talking earlier about
having the desire to be with Krishna.
Yes.
Do you have any tips on how to become more steady in our bhakti? Because we have that desire, but then it goes, and how to, increase it.
Well, to be honest, even Arjuna, when he was fighting in the battlefield, he had to have his mind on his astras. He couldn't be like singing songs. He couldn't be like offering prayers. He had to have his full attention on making those weapons go where they were supposed to go. But he had a sense he was doing it with Krishna. Krishna was there with him. So I find this is the most important thing for me, is to have this sense that Krishna's with me. And it's not made up. It's not just a nice, way to feel good. It's really true. And one time I heard it said, and I don't mean this philosophically, but just as a concept, that when you try to become a devotee, you're not dealing in your heart anymore with Paramatma, because Paramatma sits there and he gives you tips. You wanted to own a house, here's a house. You wanted this, here's this. He remains neutral, and he gives you your forgetfulness and your recollection. But when you become a devotee, and you genuinely want to become a devotee, you're not dealing with Paramatma, you're dealing with Krishna in the heart. So Krishna goes everywhere with you. And if you develop the mindset that I want to serve you, I'm not very good at it. It's a very high thing. It's a very complicated thing, actually. I have to be very much more pure than I am. But I have a want to serve you. That's enough for Krishna to step in and show himself. Because Krishna won't interfere with your freedom. Otherwise, you would become AI, artificial intelligence, a machine, something lifeless. Because AI is not intelligence, it's a machine. So he doesn't want love from machines. He wants a relationship with each one of his jivas. And one of them is us. And so we have the freedom to either tell him, I want to love you, I'm not very good at it, please help me. Or to say, I want a house, I want a car, I want to pass my exams, I want a really good job, because if I don't have a good job, I won't make a lot of money, and I won't get a good husband, and I won't have 10 children or 3 children, or too many, too little. We can go on and on talking like this to him. And at that point, he doesn't step forward. He stays neutral. But when we start to say, I really wish I could learn to love you, then there's a beautiful quote that I saw one time. I kept it on my wall for a long time, of Srila Prabhupada's, because when I heard him say it in a lecture on a recording, I was astonished. Because when I was a young devotee, when we did something wrong, we would say something like, oh, it's Krishna's problem. Krishna's in control. It's Krishna's problem. We smashed the car. Oh, it's Krishna's problem. And we would get soundly corrected for that. How do you say that's Krishna's problem? That's your problem. So this particular recording, Prabhupada was saying something. I'll repeat it. He said, if you see that everything belongs to Krishna, then it's Krishna's problem, whatever it is. And he knows how to solve the problem. Why is it my problem? So when I heard Prabhupada say it's Krishna's problem, I was in another room in the house, and I heard this phrase, and I thought, my gosh, that's what we used to get in trouble for. And so I came running in, and I found the number of the recording, and I looked it up in the folio, and there it was, this very powerful quote. So in this quote, it's saying 2 things. If you do this, then it's this. So if you learn and train yourself, take the effort to say everything belongs to Krishna, then everything is Krishna's problem, because everything is his. So we have to raise up our theology, our consciousness, our understanding of Krishna consciousness, step by step, bit by bit. It's not a matter of memorization. It's not a matter of how much you know. It's a matter of these key, particular moments that stick with you for the rest of your life. We're allowed to ask for them. And if you ask for them, Krishna will give them. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yes, thank you.
But there's another person asking question. Ishita Mataji, can you come online? Unmute your phone, please.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare
This is
Krishna.
Gaurav. This is Gaurav here from Auckland, Dandvat Pranam. Mataji, want to ask you something. Like you told that if we ask and think from Krishna, it's a business. Then how we can ask Radharani to get a taste, a divine taste in our bhakti, so we can dwell the relationship back to the Krishna. So the broken relationship will be finished and we will go back to Krishna. Look.
Okay, so it all rests on your motivation. You see, it's natural for us to love Krishna. It's natural for us to be with Krishna. So if you say, for example, I'll give you a very silly example. If you say to somebody, please, I need some air to breathe. Is that selfish?
No.
But if you say, please, I need some air to breathe because I want to get out of here very quickly and do 100 different things. Is that more selfish than the first one?
Yeah, looks like, yeah.
Yeah. So we've got to become more simple. In other words, we're complex. We're like, please, could you give me this? But the reason I want this is because of this and this. And when I have that, then I will take this, this, and this. And we're trained by modern society to be complex. We're trained by modern society to try to be ambitious, successful, efficient, and the best. So those seeds are there in our hearts. And so when we come forward with a simple prayer, please let me become attracted to Krishna, we need to learn to decipher, to recognize in ourselves what else goes along with that. This is called self-introspection, and it's part of the process of anatta nivritti, removing the unwanted things from our heart. That's when it becomes selfish. Do you have any more to add to that?
Oh, no. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, sorry, I just want to ask, so why devotees, as a devotee, we feel struggle in our devotional service?
Well, just a moment.
I'll just quickly check, Prabhu.
Mataji's battery went flat or something.
I'm just calling her.
Okay. Everybody stay online. Thank you.
No, she's there.
Mataji, you're not audible. We can see, but we can't hear you.
Am I back?
Yes, Mataji.
Sorry,
You first.
I tried to move it and it all went funny. You know, there's high tech and low tech. Well, I'm no tech, so sorry. So why do we have trouble?
Mataji.
Because we're not very advanced. we're not very advanced. We're beginners on the path. And so as we continue with our journey, it gets easier. Just like, you know, if you go on a long journey somewhere, in the beginning, okay, so I'm coming from Delhi to Vrindavan. Yes? And when I'm in Delhi, am I very close to my destination?
No.
But if I keep walking, what's happening?
You're going closer to your destination.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Now, what happens if there's some kind of a problem on the way? Like there's a bus breaks down or there's a big hole in the ground. What do I do then?
You wait and you find another solution to go more fast.
Yes, but you see, you can't say, why is there a problem? How come there's a problem? That's not fair, because the material world is made of problems. And the real problem is that I'm still somewhat connected in my thoughts and my desires to the material world that's made of problems. And sometimes in my beginning years, I blame that on Krishna. But when I grow more strong, more steady, I begin to realize that that's just the nature of how it is in the material world. And why do you want to remove all the problems? They're good for you.
So that dwells our trust and faith in Krishna. The problems, more problems, Krishna wants to test us.
No, he's not trying to test you. He's just wanting to see you make your journey from Delhi to Vrindavan. You say you want to go to Vrindavan. Now start walking. You don't, what do you want to fly to Vrindavan? Do you want to blink your eyes and you're in Vrindavan? That's childish.
Yes.
There's hard work involved in, you've got to move your legs, you've got to move your brain. So we're a little childish. We want Krishna consciousness to sort of flow towards us. So the problem with that is that will keep us in the world of materialism, because we're centering ourselves as the one who's meant to be the satisfied by Krishna, not that we're meant to satisfy him. So we still have a little tendency that way, or perhaps a big tendency that way. So we have to work harder to overcome that. And when we do overcome it, we find ourselves happily on the way to Vrindavan, and we become more and more excited the closer we get. So it's a question of maturity.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
And we like to request.
Thank you for being very open and honest, because these are real questions that we all have.
Thank you, Mataji. And we love to see you here in Auckland when the lockdown finish or in near future.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
So once again, Mataji, thank you so much for taking your time out and being with us. Mataji, just to let you know that next year in April, we will be celebrating the 50th anniversary of Shri Shri Radha Gidhari.
Ah, wow, that's wonderful.
And if you do remember that when we were celebrating the 45th anniversary, I did invite you.
I remember.
Yeah, and something happened that you were unable to come. So please maybe note now that we will be inviting you if everything goes well and if the lockdown is lifted. So please do come, give your association to us and give us an opportunity to serve you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Once again, thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna. So, Nanraj, conclude from here.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you, Mataji, for the association. Yes, sir.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. All glory to Jagattarini Mataji ki jai. Shri Prabhupada jai. Gaur Bhakti jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Mataji ki jai.
Hare
Hare Krishna.